All right. Here comes the fun part. We don't need the sketch anymore, so I'm just going to delete that layer. The next step is start converting things to symbols. But what I want to do is convert her as a character entirely into a symbol and then work inside that symbol, which is also called nesting. And there's a reason for that that will present itself at the end. And it's a really fun, cool trick. But it's a technique widely used amongst animators using Animate CC as far back as Flash and all that. Go to modify, I have everything selected, okay? Modify, convert to symbol, or hit F8. And let's just call her girl_rig at any time. So now she's a symbol. She's a self-contained symbol, character inside a graphic symbol. I'm using graphic symbols. This is something I was I didn't have time for in the Adobe Max session to explain the 3 different behaviors for symbols: movie clip, button, and graphic. The reason why I chose graphic is because graphic symbols will play, as you'll see later once we start animating, will play in the timeline, in the Animate authoring environment that we're in right now. Whereas movie clip symbols won't. They only render when published afterwards. And also graphic symbols are in sync with their parent timelines and all other timelines. So nesting tons of animations in graphic symbols, it's one of those what you see is what you get. When you play the timeline in Animate, you'll see all the nested animations inside of graphic symbols play also, and you can time things out better. Movie clips timelines are all independent from all other timelines. So they're dynamic by nature, and they're great for just dynamic content like Flash games and things like that. First of all, there's lots of things you can do once it's a symbol. And in fact, what is a symbol? If I go into the library, anything you convert into a symbol gets added into the library, okay? And I can drag several instances of this symbol into the library, scale them. I can go to properties. I can apply a color effect like tint to many of them, right? And adjust that as much as I want. I can go and add alpha. I can tween these effects over time. I can do all this stuff, right? Tint again, but let's do something like that color, or maybe something else like that color. But these are all instances of ball, which is the ball symbol I just created. So, but why is that important? Well, if I double click, I enter edit mode, right? I'm inside the ball symbol now. Everything else that's been grayed out or washed out are stuff I can't grab them anymore because they're out on the scene 1 timeline. Here they are. Here they all are. But if I double click here, I can't grab those anymore because we're inside of this object. Now, here's an interesting thing. Since this ball, all of these are instances of this ball symbol, since I'm at the original artwork I created inside this symbol, if I edit it, they all edit. They all get updated because they're pointing to the same symbol. That's kind of what you're looking at. Now, the reason why that was important, especially back in the day when Flash exploded on the internet, was because you could have an object like this that's a vector. It's extremely small in file size. And if you were really good at reusing symbols, you could have animations and games that were, really long in duration, but took up very little space online in terms of download time and bandwidth. Because if you reuse the same assets over and over again, hundreds of times across a timeline, that the browser only needed to download that object once, even though you used it 1,000 times. So that was why Flash was such a huge thing back in 2000, why the internet exploded with so much amazing content. It was just the way you could have a SWF file, an SWF file delivered that contained so much interactivity and animation and sound and all of it, and it had a very small file size. So, but there's even more to why you'd want to use a symbol that I'll show you as well. So I'm just going to delete these because we don't need them. So now she's a symbol, right? So we're going to dive in here. I'm going to double click it. We're inside the girl rig. Everything, we're back out into these little objects. Object drawings, as you see here, are drawing objects as they're called. Now what I want to do is this. Select them all. And I'm going to right click over any of the selected area and say distribute to layers for now. And so here they all are in the same hierarchy. Whoops. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is start thinking about what's going to move and how it's going to move, okay? I'm not going to change her eyes. I'm not going to make them open or do anything else other than this because I'm going to keep it really simple. The head, the face, basically the front of her hair, and the ear, the mouth, the two eyes, they're all going to move together. So they don't need to be technically separate objects. If I hold down Shift and click on them, and even just test it out by holding down Shift and hit the arrow keys. Oh, I forgot the mouth. All right, so this is good. So now what I want to do is go to modify. I want to convert this to a symbol and just call it, let's call it face. Now notice I didn't include the back of the hair because if I did, I'd have a layering issue. Okay, now you'll notice, and you'll see why in a minute. This is her, now her face. It's a symbol, okay? And there's going to be a reason that'll present itself very soon. All the other assets that are now part of the face symbol that were on these layers have jumped into this symbol. If I double click, here they all are. They're still separate. They're inside the face symbol. Okay, that's all you need to know. I'm going to delete the layers that are empty. We no longer need them. Now the back of the hair, let's convert that to a symbol as well. I have a shortcut for it, so just to save some time, let's call hair underscore back and make it a symbol. And let's see, so we have this as a symbol, the hair as a symbol. Let's go with neck. Whoops, neck. Hit OK. And this is the torso. Let's make sure we grab all of it. Yep. Hit F8. F8's the function key. Oh, sorry, I already did neck. Torso. Okay. Now let's do this. Call it arm. I'm not going to convert this arm to a symbol. We're going to actually delete it. And I'll explain why in a minute, because we're going to do all our animations inside this arm. And there's going to be no reason to have an additional arm symbol to then create the animations again. What I'm going to do is, like you saw with those balls I created, I'm going to create an instance of this symbol by holding down Alt, right? If I select it, it's an instance of arm. It's an instance of the same symbol here. Just duplicated it. Let's go to modify. Let's do what we did before. Vertical, modify, transform, horizontal, and let's throw it here. So again, I'm going to cut down the labor of animating these two arms by just doing it one time, and it'll make sense very soon. The same, so as far as the legs go, slightly different story here. What I'm going to do is double click it. This is a stroke, meaning I can bend it and things like that. I want these to sort of animate in a rigid kind of way, and I'm going to use layer parenting. And sometimes when there's strokes out here on the parent timeline, grabbing them can be, or even just working with them can be a little tricky. What I sometimes like to do is just go into the stroke, select it, go to modify shape, and convert it to a fill. And now the handles are just easier to get to because it's treating it as a shape instead of a stroke with just 2 vector points. Just the way I like to work. That said, now that this is an object drawing with a shape in it, I mean, you can see how when I select the other legs that we made with, the line tool, the selection is down the middle. And now the selection here is, again, it's hard to see, is on the perimeter of it. It's just easier to work with. Anyway, that said, the leg stroke that we converted to a shape, I'm going to select it, and just call it leg and make this a symbol. These aren't symbols, they're just placeholders. Now what I want to do is duplicate these to create the other legs. Now these are all the same symbol, okay? Now I'm going to show you another cool trick with Animate, deleting all these layers that we don't need. If you're a stickler for layer naming, I've been known to not be good about naming my layers. People have given me a lot of crap for that. I'm going to select everything I've created here, everything that's been converted to a symbol. I'm going to hit Control X and cut them. Paste them in place into one single layer and delete all the empty layers. And you'll see why in a second. I'm now going to reselect all of them. I'm going to right click over them and distribute to layers. Animate's distributed them to each to their layer, but the most important part, the trick here, was that each layer has adopted the symbol names. So there you go. It just kills a little bit of time. All right. Now, the next thing to do, we're not even ready to animate yet, okay? Because if I grab the free transform tool and pretend like I'm going to go animate and I want to rotate her head, you'll see when I click on a symbol, pay attention to these white dots that show up, okay? They are always in the middle of the bounding box surrounding the symbol itself. And if I go to rotate, well, that's not really rotating correctly, right? Neither is this arm. So what you want to do is select the symbol and click and drag with the free transform tool and place that center point where you'd want it to anatomically correctly hinge, okay? It's really important to do this before you start to animate. I actually want to turn off snap. And the reason why it's important to do this before animating is because when we animate and create classic tweens, apply classic tweens between two keyframes or multiple keyframes, if the white center point dot is in two different locations relative to the symbol across multiple keyframes, it breaks the tween. It causes I could even show you. It causes things to drift in weird ways and then snap back to where it should be. So it breaks the math, so to speak. So this is the most important step at this point. Let's put the leg about here. Actually, let's do this. Make her legs a little longer. Bring those down just a little bit. Give her really long legs. Whoops. Okay, something like this. And the next thing we want to do is the knees. Right now, again, case in point, we grab this leg and go to hinge it. Nope, it's going to break, right? Because the center point's here. So we want to bring it up to about here. But we also want to double check before we even animate that we start to do this. Oh, see, there's a problem. I haven't really aligned these right. I haven't paid enough attention to it. We can close color panel. So let's undo that. What I want to do is go back to here, which is the timeline, and here, this box here, it allows me to click on it and convert layers to outlines, right? And now we can kind of see the problem here. This is like a big oval. So that's never really going to hinge right without showing some sort of weird overlap or some weird gap. So before I set the center point, what I want to do is just click the shift key, hold down or tap the down arrow key. And once these become basically perfect circles, then we know they're going to rotate correctly. In fact, I've even gone, one cool way to do all this also is to go into the symbol, right? Create a new layer. I've just double clicked the leg and I'll lock that layer. Create a red circle. We don't want a stroke. Create a little circle like this and place it here. And you can kind of use this as a guide. go back out and do this and place another circle and this symbol here of this leg and just align the circles upright and then delete them later. There's different ways of getting really exact about it, but I find sometimes just eyeballing it works just as well by converting these outlines. So now when I click here, and I know this is pretty close to the center, I'm not going to be too exact. I know it's going to rotate and hinge without creating a weird overlap or an unsightly gap between the upper leg and the lower leg. All right, that's why I'm doing it this way. If these were a stroke, it would be harder to do this. Trust me on that. Move back out a little bit. Find that center point. Move it there. And let's just sort of test this rotation. It's fine. It's going to work out just fine and dandy. All right. Now we're actually finally ready to start rigging up her a little bit more and animating her. Okay. In the timeline panel, right? Show parenting view. If you don't see this or if it's grayed out, go to document settings, which I did that really fast because I hit Control J, but go to modify document. You want to make sure use advanced layers mode is checked. That's all. That's all you got to do. And hit OK. All right. And that will provide you with the layer depth panel, which is really cool if you want to simulate a parallax camera move and things like that. We're not going to do that for this. We want layer parenting. So click that and it opens up this little section of the timeline. Okay. The next step is we want to figure out what is going to be the parent symbol in all this, because we're going to create a parent-child relationship between these symbols. Some of them, not all of them. So for example, right now when we rotate the torso, it's just rotating on its own. But it would be really cool if the neck and the head and the arms went with it, right? So we know the arms, we want them to be children of the torso, which is going to be the parent. The parent is up here at the top. And here is an arm. It's below or underneath the torso. So inside here, my cursor turns into a hand. Annika, go to sleep. Watch this on replay tomorrow. It's really late for you, isn't it? I don't even want to know what time it is right now. I think it's like, oh, I don't even want to know. Have you been up all night? Cursor turns into a hand, right? If I click and drag arm all the way up to torso, now you'll see it's now a child of the torso. Great. This arm, same thing. Make it a child of the torso. What else do we want? We want the neck to be a child of the torso. And we want the face to be a child of the neck. Let's do that. So we drag it down to there. So now if we test this, yep, that's all good. If we move the neck, that's all good. If we move the head, good. Just to test, I'm going to undo it. We're not ready to animate yet, but we're getting close. So the hair, before I mentioned how I didn't want to make the back of the hair, this part of the face or the head symbol, right? That's because I wanted to animate. It has to be behind, like the face is, or the head is in front of the neck, and the back of the hair is behind the neck. Okay. You're welcome. But I need the hair to move with the head. So that's where the advantages of layer parenting come in. Go to hair back, and that should be a child of what is the face. So if I click and drag that, now watch, it's really kind of fun. It should move with the face, and it does. Oh, you know what I didn't do? Edit the center point of the back of the hair. That was a good little test. So let's do that. This should be, I hope I didn't break anything. It should be fine. Yeah, Ta-da-da-da-da-da. That's going to help us later on when we start animating. It's going to make everything, you know, a lot easier. Creating animations like this, it's okay to spend a lot of the time or most of the time up front just preparing, because then everything just goes smoother when you start animating. It's kind of like painting a house, right? You spend weeks, you know, scraping and sanding, priming, but then when you finally put that final coat on, it goes on quickly and easily, and all the prep work you did just made it worthwhile. All right, so we're almost done with the layer parenting, but we haven't touched the legs yet. Now, it would seem intuitive to take the leg, right, the upper legs, and make them children of the torso. But if I do that, right, when I start to animate, then all of a sudden the legs get a little wonky. We could do it, but I find just through trial and error that it causes more problems. You end up fixing a lot. So what I like to do is still use layer parenting for the legs, but what I want to do is I want to parent this leg to this upper leg and parent this leg to this upper leg. The legs themselves in their entirety unparented to the torso. Okay, so they're going to be sort of like their own little entity down here. So again, this leg, we can even rename this. I think we can rename this. Yes, let's do leg lower and then R for right, just so it gets a little bit clearer. And this is leg upper and right. So I know I want this leg to be a parent of this layer here. So let's click and drag to this. So now when I rotate, that leg's going to go with it. Perfect. That's what I want. That's all I want. Because the nature of this dance, she's going to be basically standing in the same spot doing her thing. And the legs are going to do their thing, but everything's going to pretty much stay the same right here at her hips or pelvis. Same thing with this. Let's name this leg lower underscore left, and this will be leg upper underscore left. So we know we want this to be a parent of this. And let's just test it real quick. Yes, that works. Good. All right, now we're in good shape. Done.